Welcome back to the PTQ podcast, where we bring together strength, rehab, and performance. And guys, let's go a little off script today. So, today concludes the first half of my third season for this 2026 year. And as I'm sitting back and reflecting on everything that's happened, oftentimes I have episodes where I have topics in mind and I have a rough outline when I go into the episodes so that I kind of have structure and I'm not just ranting like I tend to do, especially in some of my beginning episodes. If you've ever watched my quote unquote season one, my first year of making this podcast, I didn't really know what I was doing. I still don't really, but I really didn't know what I was doing. And I hadn't even had a general sense of what the podcast was going to be about. I just knew I had a lot of ideas. I like to think, I really like to talk. So why don't I put it somewhere? And over time, it's evolved into what it is today. And then that in part is because of the growth and development of my business and how it works in tandem with these things I like to talk about. So I do some free education on here. But today, I wanted to just go back to my roots and do a raw, unedited episode where I just go. I just go and I don't stop until I run out of ideas. And the purpose of today's episode is basically to reflect, but then also create lessons out of that reflection and hopefully valuable lessons that you guys might be able to, as you hear me talk about things, look at your own life and look at your recent experiences and understand I can draw some relationships here, and I think I know what he's saying. And I'm going to think about these things that I've gone through while he's talking. So that's kind of my goal for this episode. If you're listening to this, I want you to, as I'm speaking on these things, maybe what I say doesn't necessarily resonate with you directly because you didn't experience the same thing as me, but maybe there's a really relevant experience in your life that through this retrospective analysis you'll be able to look at in a new light because that's truly what all this stuff is about, guys. It's perspective, and that's a topic that I delved into heavily in the beginning of the podcast when I was trying to understand the concept of perspective. And oftentimes I would read books. I explored a lot of the modern day stoicism. I read a lot of those old texts, and I got very familiar with these authors. You know, Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius and Seneca and all these big names. And at first, I was just doing it to do it. Stoicism had kind of become a trend, and a lot of people online would post about just cool stoic quotes and gym pictures with it, and it was motivating. It was just a cool trend, and I hopped on the trend, and then suddenly it wasn't a trend anymore. I noticed that by reading these texts, actually reading them, I started to question how many people that post about stoicism actually read the books and the literature that it's derived from, because most people just don't take the time to do that. They just post the cool quotes and they, flex in the mirror with some quotes behind them, and that's their idea of practicing stoicism. But it really is so much deeper than that, and it shaped the way that I perceive the world. It shaped the way that I go about my day, that I react to situations, my emotional responses to people in my life, to my relationship, to my performance at my job. It's deeply impacted me and really formed the character that makes up me today. So I kind of want to backpedal and make today's episode about some of those stoic topics like reflection, what I'm doing right now. You guys should have chapters of life, seasons of life. People that like to pretend like life is linear and things just progress over. No, it's not. It's ebbs and flows and seasons of downs and seasons of ups. And within those seasons, even more fluctuations. Times when everything seems like it's going great. And then the worst thing that's happened in the last 5 years just gets dropped on you right in the middle of this happy chapter. And there's just no way of telling when that stuff's coming. And the Stoics like to say to, prepare for the storm before it happens. Don't be floating around out at sea and then notice that the clouds start looking bad. And now you've got to prepare in like the last 5 minutes to make sure you don't die or sink. And most people, that's how they live their life. Last second preparations, hoping to just take things as they come. And one of the best ways you can prepare yourself is by preparing your mind. Training is great. Physical exertion, training the body, that's fantastic. And that is seriously, I mean, you couldn't pick a topic for me to talk longer about. But when it comes to the mind, that influences everything, every single thing that you do. And because of my random idea to start a podcast about stoicism those couple years prior, I see every single day how it pays off in the things that I do. Now, for those of you that don't know, I've been in school pretty much for my entire life, if we're being honest here. Really for the last 20 years, legitimately. I kindergarten all the way to 12th grade, graduated high school immediately, like 2 weeks later, started undergrad, and I did 3 years of undergrad, got out early, went straight into physical therapy school. That was another 3 years, got my doctorate, and quite literally 1 week after getting my doctorate, started work in a residency program, which is postdoctoral education for PT, to even further specialize into a subsector. So for me, that's sports. So I'll be a sports certified specialist by the time I'm done. I still got a year to go. I just finished the first year, which is primarily orthopedics. So I'm sitting here talking to you 7 years deep into 8 years of post high school education. I'm still in the learning system. And I used to look at that number and just think to myself, like, what the hell? How do people commit to that amount of time just waiting and waiting and waiting for the payoff? And part of the reason why I didn't go to school for orthopedic surgery, which is what I wanted to do initially, is because I looked at the time frame that it would take me to get to that end goal, and I just saw a mountain in front of me, and I thought, nah. Regardless of how much I think that could be an amazing future for me, and just a financially amazing option, and doing something that I know I love, and I definitely knew I love once we had cadaver lab in PT school, and sitting there with the tools, just thinking to myself, oh man, I should have been a surgeon. But I digress. The point is, I sold myself that opportunity just by thinking about the process, like taking the process and just looking at the top of the mountain and not analyzing what could be gained throughout that process. Like when you guys set goals, I hope that you set smaller benchmarks along the way, or at least mentally divide it up into chapters. It's all about chapters, chapters of life, chapters of goals. You have to segment things, because if every single thing that you decide to go take on in life is just point A to point B, and the only thing that you ever think about is point B, you're going to get so lost in the sauce so fast. And it's going to feel terrible every day, because it's going to feel like you're making no progress. It's going to feel like you're doing nothing. And the reality of most of these giant projects and goals and things that we do to achieve our biggest wishes in life, they're a huge undertaking that take 5, 10, 15, 20 years, however long it might be. And if you can only every day look at the end goal and wonder why you're not there, you're going to drive yourself insane. So we got to break things up a little bit. And it makes it really easy if you take a moment. This is a practice I want you guys to all do right now. Let's just take a moment and look back at the last, let's say, 6 months of your life. Nice little chunky time frame there where it's long enough for something to have probably happened significantly in your life, or some motion to have occurred, but not so long that you can't narrow it down to one or two particular things. So let's take a 6 month time pocket. So for now, I guess it's appropriate, since 6 months ago was the first day of the year. So think about what you've done since January 1st this year, and then break it down into chapters. So maybe there's one big thing that you accomplished that stands out among others, or one big thing that just went horribly wrong that stands out amongst others, and that's your big event. That's your end goal, end outcome of the 6 months, is whatever your probably the first thing that comes to mind. But then think month by month. And I would ask you, have you ever actually done this? Like as you're thinking about this, have you ever done this exercise where you sit down, and even if you have to write it down on a paper, right? January, February, March, April, May, June, and just start analyzing each month and think about, what did I do before you even think about what did I accomplish? Just what did I do? What were the contents of those months? Because life flies by, passes us by so fast, and we forget about all these little things that we do because we call them little, we label them little, we label them mundane, normal parts of our day. But the only reason they get remembered or not remembered, lack thereof, as those small events, is because we don't label them as important. We just write them off because it wasn't an accomplishment of one of these giant goals. It wasn't the finish line day that we've been, having in mind for the last however many years. So it meant nothing. But that's where we go wrong. So in reflection, if you do this periodically, like for me, I do it probably once a month. I don't actually schedule out a day when I sit down and think about things like this, but I've just gotten so used to doing it now that there always comes a day when I start to get antsy, and I'm like, all right, what have we been doing? Like literally, what have we been doing? Because ever since I started working full time, life really just boom, right there. It's there and then it's gone. And I don't like life to fly by without thinking about what I've done, because then a year's just gone by and you don't know what happened. And how can you know where you're going if you don't know where you're at? I say that all the time. So, coming back to this practice here, let's open up the book of January. So, maybe you're listening to this and you're in your car and you don't have access to something to write down. So, maybe just think in your head. Let's make a little tree. So, start at the top. January. All right. What's the big thing? What's the big theme of January? Like, is there an emotion associated with it? Is there a goal, an accomplishment of a goal associated with it? A struggle, a a feeling, like whatever it is, just identify that. What is the theme of January? And then let's break that theme up. So, week by week, right? We've got about 4 weeks in January. Maybe you don't know what you did exactly each one of those weeks, but were they normal work weeks? Did you go on vacation? Did you do anything out of the ordinary? Was there a race that you did, or a competition that you had, or you visited family, or you saw an old friend that you hadn't seen in a long time? Think about those things. Standout events, like anything that you would not consider a normal week for you. So anything that is even slightly greater than you just went to work that day. And we're going to get to that because that's still something too. So there's some of your minor events, right? That's scattered throughout the week that we forget about. We forget about them very quickly. Now let's go a little more micro. Okay, so let's go down to, was there any day that we had a really interesting conversation? And here's the problem: if you're only doing this on 6 month timelines, you're probably not going to remember that crap, because it's been a long time now. And you talk to a lot of people in your life, and conversations, they come and they go, and if you don't reflect on them, you forget about them. So this is where the micro reflections might help with your overall 6 month looking back at what you did. Because if every day you kind of sit down, even in bed, just thinking to yourself, did I have any cool conversations today that really meant something to me, that I took something out of? And you can't take something out of if you don't think about them. So if you're starting to blank here and you're like, all right, Nate, I'm not coming up with too much good here. So like, how are we going to do this all the way down to June? Well, that means that you're probably not reflecting often enough. So I would urge you that if you're already feeling stuck in this reflective process here, you're just missing data. You just need more data to fill in the blanks here. So tomorrow, when you wake up tomorrow, I want you to essentially track your entire day, as if I was your coach and I had you on a fitness or a nutrition plan, and I had you tracking everything. I want you to just track your day. And you can journal it however you want. You can put it in notes on your iPhone. You can put it on a notepad. You can just, if you really want to, just stick it in your brain and just be intentional about it, because you've got to make sure that you actually collect this data, and track everything. Like, keep track of everything. Keep track of feelings on the hour. Like, it might sound stupid, but like, have a conversation with someone and then sit down and just jot down one sentence on how you're feeling, and maybe like a funny thing or an interesting thing that came out of that conversation. You would be so surprised how much that's going to mean to you later, because you're going to start remembering small details from events in your life that they slip by you all the time. And you're going to suddenly notice the amount of things that slip by you, and now the amount of things that you're catching in this filter. So think about conversations and reflect on them. Think about spikes of emotions that you had, are great reflection points. Like, if you had a moment in your day where you were excessively angry or very upset or just overjoyed, like could not contain yourself, write it down, write down why, create a capsule of that memory. And then when you go to reflect on your week or your month or whatever, you're going to have these collections of ideas and things that happen, and you're going to be able to pull yourself back into that moment because you, in your own words, wrote it down. And you're going to read it and you're going to hear yourself in that voice in your head, that unique voice to you. And you're going to pull yourself directly back to that moment in time. And it's going to fill you back up with that emotion. And it's going to make you look at it differently, because now you're not in that moment anymore. You're not in that day anymore. You're probably a lot smarter, hopefully, and have that retrospect where you can look back at the event and be like, let me analyze this. Like remove the emotion from it. Like, sure, we're considering the emotion I had then, but remove all biases and remove how I felt in that moment. Now let me really think about what happened there, how I reacted, how I felt, how I moved on from that moment, what I learned from it. And if you do that, and you make a practice of doing that, you're going to really, really, really start understanding yourself better. And you're going to understand how to pivot when you're feeling off, or understand what are the root of the feelings that you have, because you can look back at events that happen and relate them and see, oh, well, when this happened, I felt the same way. I wonder why that is. Start asking more questions. Ask yourself more questions. Because this is what got me to where I'm at now, where I feel like I have a very vast understanding of myself. And I don't have these moments all the time where I'm sitting wondering, oh, what's wrong with me? Like, have you ever sat there and just thought to yourself, if someone asked you how you're doing, you're like, Something's just off. Like I feel off and I don't know what it is." That doesn't happen to me anymore, because now, don't get me wrong, I feel off, but I know how to describe it because I know why I feel off. And that is a discovery that only came from doing this over and over and over and over, to the point where I started discovering trends. And trends are your friend, but you can't recognize trends without data. So I'm always talking data, data, data. We're always on the show talking about different nutritional content of foods and tracking your proteins and what are the best supplements and what do they do for your body and what's the physiology of this lift and blah, blah, blah. That's all great objective data science, research backed investigations and ways to optimize your body, but we're talking about your mind right now. And I don't care about what research says here. I didn't study any research articles to do this podcast episode. I'm just talking straight from the heart and the mind here. And I'm telling you what worked for me. And if you establish that relationship with yourself, like you guys check in with your friends a lot, right? And you check in hopefully with your partner a lot, and maybe with your parents or your close family, and that's how you maintain those relationships. Like those relationships would probably start to fade a little bit if you never said a word to them in 5 years, right? I mean, but people don't take that concept and apply it to themselves. You are your own friend. Hopefully you should be your own friend. You are the voice in your head is not you. But you have a choice whether or not to be the friend of the voice in your head, the enemy of the voice in your head, a passive observer, a someone who just ignores them and pretends like they don't exist. And I'll promise you that friend is probably the better option of the others, because that creates a team of two. Because there's the you that acts and goes about your day and does all these things, the conscious you, and then there's the subconscious you and that voice that's always in the back of your head. And that voice is formed by all of your experiences, all of your thoughts, all of your emotions, all of your, past biases, prejudices, whatever it might be. It's a collection of you. And if it's not addressed frequently, it just becomes its own entity because you're not controlling it anymore. And when the Stoics talk about controlling your mind and only, dealing in things that we can control, well, if you don't even know what you can control to begin with, and certainly not yourself, if you're not reflecting and you're not checking in with yourself and becoming your own friend, establishing your own relationship, how can you possibly hope to control situations around you? And this is why people get flustered, and they always feel like life is so turbulent, they have no control over their situation, and oh, it's out of my hands, and I can't seem to make anything go right. Well, I would bet 9 times out of 10 that if that's you, you're probably not doing the things that I'm talking about here. So I want you to try it. You don't have to do it for a long time. And like I said, this is just anecdotally what works for me. If it doesn't work for you, don't do it anymore. But if you try this for a month or two, I really hope that you start to see the devil's in the details. And I just over and over and over, I've had this lesson taught to me through many different channels, whether it's, being a trainer and working with clients, or being a physical therapist and working with patients and just trying to give them the best care possible. Like this whole year in residency was all about optimize care. Optimize care, pick the right interventions, make sure they're evidence based, always have a reason for the things you're doing, become more efficient at evaluations and get better outcome measures with your patients. And all this is great. It's good, right? Like that objectively kind of makes you a better clinician. But the secret recipe that I did not crack until almost the very end of the residency, ready for this, guys? I'm going to tell you right now, especially if you're a PT listening to this, this is how to be the best PT in the world. This is how to be the greatest person in the world. One word: listen. Listen more. There's a really great quote. It's on my desk in my office, and I'm gonna stumble on who actually made the quote. I think it was Seneca. It's either Epictetus or Seneca, but it sounds more like a Seneca quote. And it's, "You have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so listen more than you speak." And the first time I saw that, I'm like, "That's kind of dumb." Like, it's we're just drawing relationships here that don't exist. But the more I think about it, and the more I really analyze a lot of Seneca's works and things that he talks about and ways to become a stoic and how to act with a stoic nature. People always think it's like, oh, this emotionless, like don't acknowledge anything, just be like a hard ass. No, it's reflecting and it's being very thoughtful and processing your thoughts before you act. And how can you do that more effectively? Well, listen more, because that means that you probably open your mouth less, which means you're processing more because you're quiet and you're observing and you're understanding human behavior. I mean, it is literally a learning process to just sit down and listen to someone speak. And you'd be very surprised the amount of people that don't do that. And I catch myself doing this all the time. My fiance always reminds me of this. I'm having conversations with people and I hear something that excites me, something that I can really relate to. And my first reaction before I even acknowledge what they said or hear them out, let them finish their story, I just cut right in, boom, jump. Let me tell you my experience. It's very similar to that, and I don't see that in the moment because it's an emotional response. It's partly I want to be seen, I want to be heard. That just that general put the spotlight on me in conversation kind of thing. And the other part is that I just am not conscious of taking the time to really listen to people and hear them, truly hear them, not just listen and then, okay, they're done talking. Now it's my turn. If the entire time someone is speaking to you, the only thing that you're thinking about is processing like the next thing that you're going to say about yourself, you're not listening to them. You're listening, but you're not hearing. You're just it's going in one ear and out the other. And I've caught myself so many times in the last couple months doing this, and I've been working very, very hard to get better at it. And really, all it just comes down to is speak less and listen more. So Seneca or whoever said that crap, they were onto something when they were talking about the two ears and one mouth. And maybe that's what God intended. Who knows? But the point is, tremendous progress can be made in all these things that we're talking about right now by just becoming a better listener. And in doing so, you're going to collect so many more perspectives. And that's how you shape your own perspective. Guys, life is just one big game of how many perspectives can you collect to form your own. And that should be ever changing. Anyone who tells me that they know something, a stone cold fact about themselves or a stone cold fact about something or an opinion that's just unwavering, unmoving, my alarm bells start to ring and I just wonder, oh, okay, that's interesting because, you know, things are ever changing. Things are very volatile. We learn new things every day. We research more heavily every day. Technology gets better. There's always advancements being made. There's also always new experiences being made. So if you have an unwavering opinion on something, I mean, it better be like a hard fact, like two equals two, 3 plus 3 equals 6. Like these things that hopefully we know to be true, at least now, our current understanding of mathematics. That's one thing. I'm talking about something totally different. If there's someone in your life, and maybe it's you, maybe you can be honest with yourself and know it's you, whose opinion never changes. They're just stuck in their ways. Maybe it's politically, maybe it's emotionally, anything, guys. I'm just spitballing here. And they refuse not just to change, but to hear other opinions. Like they'll interrupt someone in the middle and just, no, 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 this is the way. Like this is what I know. This is what I know is true. That person probably doesn't reflect very often. I'll tell you that because reflection exposes you. And this is why people don't do it, just because they don't want to face the hard facts. They don't want to look back at these past, what they probably know were embarrassing events and realize what they did wrong, where they misspoke, what they could have done better next time because it hurts. Reflection is not a fun process because most of the time, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but we're not perfect beings. We're far from it. We suck at a lot of things and we can always improve at things no matter how good we get at something. So if you think there's not something that you need to improve on, you're wrong. Start reflecting because you'll figure it out. You'll figure out the missing piece. Everyone's got one. I've got lots. And once you start looking at that stuff and you get past the ego, you escape the ego and you start looking at things objectively and assessing yourself and understanding your flaws, your weaknesses, patterns. Again, patterns, they're brilliant in these senses because they will show you trigger equals action, trigger equals action. Oh, look, it's the same one. Trigger equals action. Well, these are different triggers, but it's the same action. And it's that thing that I hate that I do. All right, well, what's similar about these triggers? Oh, okay. Well, that kind of makes more sense. Now, since I reflected and now that I kind of recognize a little trend going on here, I'm going to make one action item. So the next time that I have a conversation with someone and I feel one of those triggers coming on, I'm just going to shut up. I'm just going to not say a word, but I'm going to process it. I'm going to store it. Maybe this is where you do your little exercise. Maybe you wait for triggers to happen and then you stay absolutely silent and you just listen and hear that person out. And then after the conversation, after you stay neutral on it and just let them say their piece, go write it down, go save it for later for your reflection that we're going to do, right, guys? And then in that reflection, look at it. Now you have hard data of what the actual trigger was, not just an idea, but of the thing itself. Gather a couple examples of this and you'll paint a really, really, really nice picture for yourself on what it is that's setting you off. So now you've got an emotion associated with a perception, and that's going to bring you to your root. Right now you're going to understand, okay, well, is it the way that I'm perceiving them? Like, is there an actual trend amongst these triggers, or are these just things that I'm perceiving a certain way and maybe didn't truly hear that person? I just responded out of emotion before I could really see where they were coming from. That's the root of most people's problems, guys. That's a lot of the conflict in the world just comes from you immediately assigning a meaning to what someone says without giving time to actually process it, understand their biases, maybe how their past experiences influence what they're telling you or how they perceive something. Like, if you just take the time to be kind to yourself and to, of course, be challenge yourself, right? Be a judge of your character, be a judge of your actions. If you can be critical with yourself, it makes it much, much easier to be a little more lax with others because you'll understand in your own self assessment that people are so ridiculously flawed. So it shouldn't be a surprise that other people are struggling just like you. And if you just honestly assess yourself and see all these things going on in your own head, just know what's happening to other people. But they're not doing the work like you're doing to address it. So of course they're gonna say things that trigger you because they're probably speaking out of emotion. And I think once we just get past this barrier of understanding amongst us humans, right? It starts to make people not seem so evil because at our core, we're just looking out for ourselves. And that looks different for everybody. But we're emotional beings, we're easily triggered emotionally. And most people don't reflect because it exposes what they don't like about themselves. And it's easier to just ignore it. Once you understand that, life becomes much easier because you can really lower your expectations of other people. Don't expect other people to be incredibly kind all the time and speak, right to the music of your ear exactly the way that you like to hear things and the way you interpret things because that's not you speaking to you. And that person did not have the same experiences as you. They didn't grow up the same. Maybe they were in poverty. Maybe they lost a parent. Maybe they like it could be a multitude of different things. So I always like to get to know people a little bit better. If someone's saying a bunch of mumbo jumbo that I don't really believe in or that I'm like, "Okay, that's a crazy opinion." The first thing I do is investigate more on their background so that I get a better understanding of where they're coming from and I can maybe try to put together like an idea of their perspective and why they think certain things. And then sometimes it makes it make a lot more sense and then I can be more objective in my response and not respond with emotion. And it's like it seems, I guess, at this point that I'm at now with this whole process, like it does seem simple because once you get good at it, it is really simple because you just have to shut up. You just have to listen to people and you have to be a little bit more caring and understanding and realize that nobody's you. Nobody can see inside your brain. There's no way for you to get people to think the way that you do. Even if you teach them a million classes and you bring them on as your mentees and these people literally sign a contract agreeing to like, I will do the best that I can to become you. They'll never be you. They'll never think like you. You cannot replicate a person. You can clone a person, they still won't have the same experiences. So no matter what, you are you and no one else is you. And it's a really amazing thing that we've turned into this convoluted, awful thing that people just they hate it because no one thinks like them and no one acts like them, no one responds like them. Well, no one does what you do. No one shares your brain. So the best way that you can do, like the best method that you can practice to make this better for everyone, but especially yourself, because you're stuck with yourself whether you want to or not, is just be critical with yourself but be graceful with others because you might be the only one in a room of people doing the hard work of reflection. So you cannot expect the same kind of curiosity and understanding and multi-perspective, insightfulness from all these other people because they might still be stuck at the root cause of all their problems of what I'm talking about today. So, if you found this to be helpful, or you feel like this really is speaking to you, like, man, I'm going to try this. I think this is a problem I've had for a while, and hopefully that's all of you, because this is a systematic problem with every single human in the entire world because of how our brains are and how we act and how we respond to things. I would urge you to just try a couple of these activities at a very, very micro level and see how it changes the way that you interpret things or your perspective on situations. I am a firm believer that reflection is what has made me the man that I am today and has just really opened up my eyes and given me the ability to be patient with people that I never would have been patient with before. And, there's sometimes when patients come into the clinic where on day one, I'm already thinking, "Oh my god, like, I don't know if I could ever in a million years tolerate this person. Like, this is just like, eh, God, are you challenging me?" Like, I really think that to myself sometimes, like, this is a joke, right? Right, God? Like, you're messing with me a little bit here, like, you're telling me I have to be face to face with this person for an hour for the next 12 weeks, and somehow those always end up being my favorite patients. I don't know how it happens, but it's been a year now, over a year, and all of the quote unquote problem patients that I immediately made a certain, biased opinion on or just thought to myself, "Oh god, this is going to be awful. Like this is such a horrible human being," or whatever it was, whatever my little thought bubble was. I just took a needle and I popped it right in the moment, said, "Give it time." And let's go home and let's think about why you had those thoughts. Why did you feel that way? Why did you make those assumptions about the patient? Did you actually sit there and ask them everything to unravel all these thoughts that you had, or are they just thoughts? They just your own emotions projected onto other people. And most times the answer is didn't do enough investigating, jumped the gun way too fast, and it's on me. Because as soon as I treat them as I would someone who, no expectations, just someone who doesn't do what I do with my head because I'm a little weird and I do all this reflective stuff, things got better so much faster. And I started unraveling it, started understanding them as a person. I started being able to communicate with them better, formed a relationship, start getting told I'm the only one who treats them well. And it's like, it is literally as simple as just listen to people. That's half the reason that I got this place with people is I just sit there and I listen. There's some evals where I don't say a word for probably 5 to 10 minutes, and the patient will just stop in the middle of talking and be like, you're fantastic at your job. And I'm like, what? Like, I haven't even put my hands on you yet. And they're like, no, 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 listen to me. Like, I've been through the ringer with the healthcare system in the last 30 years. I've been dealing with chronic pain for my entire life. Nobody listens to me. I don't get more than 30 seconds to a minute with any provider, and they immediately write me off. They don't take any time to listen to me, my backstory, what's happened to me. And when they do, I can just tell it's that blank stare. They're not listening. They're not interpreting anything. They're just going to write what they need to write in their note and send me off to surgery or prescribe me a new medication. No, no, no. You are the only one who has actually seen me, and I can tell you see me. Can't tell you how many patients have told me that, and all I did was listen. So, guys, just practice this. Three main takeaways from this episode: listen a little bit more, reflect a little bit more, and then make sure that you're actually actionable on your reflections because reflections on their own, they're great. They make us very self aware, but self awareness does not equate to action. Trust me, coming from someone who prides himself in being very, very self aware and very reflective, it's almost bad to a certain extent if you keep filling that cup and you don't dump it out a little bit with action, intention, and action. You can be the most self aware person in the entire world, know all your flaws, know everything you could possibly do to get better. But if you don't start taking action on those items, the self reflection was pointless. It's a bridge to action, it makes action easier. So just make sure that you're doing the things, guys. Think less, do more. So do the processing, right? Do the hard work, do the reflection, keep it within yourself, and then act. You got to make the changes because things will never change in your life if you don't start acting differently than what you're doing right now. So do the hard work and then go display it. That's pretty much all I wanted to touch on today. And one of the pretty much major takeaways that I got from this past year, hardest year of my life. I mean, straight up. It was very difficult this orthopedic residency year. I had very little free time. I barely saw my friends. I saw my family maybe like twice in the entire year. and I was working, sometimes upward of 60, 70-hour weeks, coming home and my only off hours just grinding away at my business, recording podcasts, trying to get my coaching cohorts together, showing up for clients, doing my calls, and it was exhausting. But looking back, because of course I reflected on it, the growth has been exponential. I can see it within myself, I can feel it within myself, and it's something to be very proud of because I was intentional the whole way through with tracking how I felt, triggers of certain emotions in me, reactions I had from conversations with patients, the small, stupid, like, guys, the devil's in the details. If I hadn't done that, I would have gotten to the end of the year because of how busy I was without remembering a single thing about what I did and being able to pull a single lesson from it. But it's because of those micro reflections throughout the experience that I am very well aware of the progress that I've made mentally as a person by doing this extremely hard experience. And I still got a year to go, but I feel prepared. I feel ready for it. I feel like nothing can catch me off guard, and it will. It will. I just feel overconfident right now. But when it does, I'm ready for the storm. I prepared for the storm before the storm comes because, guys, there is a storm coming. Right now, there's a storm on its way to you. And all of us have a different ticking timeline on when that's going to hit us, but you're better off preparing now. Prepare during the easy seasons to make the hard seasons better. That's all I got for you guys today. I do hope that this was like a helpful, educational, but also very anecdotal experience oriented episode. Just something of value, pure value here. Is really all I wanted today was just be value, actionable items, and not sound like a lecture like some of my podcasts tend to sound. Because I do love educating, but I do think that some of the best education comes through experiences and hearing other people's stories and thoughts. So if today was helpful for you, definitely drop a follow on the channel, leave a rating. I'm trying to grow this channel into one of the biggest free sources of information for people that are trying to optimize their health and wellness and fitness and nutrition and all that stuff. But most importantly, their mind, because that's what all this revolves around for me is just optimizing the mind and watching the body follow when your mind's in a good state. So I do truly hope that you guys all have a good rest of your day, whatever you're listening to this, and that you derive some sort of value from this episode. And if you did, shoot me a message, let me know what you got out of it. And I'd love to hear your guys' stories too, because I'm really just in this life to collect as many perspectives as possible and see what I can do with all those jumbled up ideas and what I can produce on my own with everyone's collective thoughts. So yeah, that's pretty much all. Um, Thanks for being here, guys. As always, strength, rehab, performance. This has been a really fun episode of PT Cubed, and I think it feels nice to get back to my roots, do a little freestyling on the mic. So yeah, that's all. Peace.